What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We're out here at a range with our longtime friend and the newest member of the Iron team. Jared, welcome to the team, man. We're glad to have you.
Yeah, likewise.
So most of our viewers know that we don't like to create content about one specific topic. We're not just creating content about fitness or just about firearms or really anything else, but we like to promote the constant pursuit of personal development. And I'm certainly not the fittest guy on the internet. I'm definitely not the best shooter, but I do like to be well-rounded and well-versed in multiple disciplines. And I like to have guys on who are subject matter experts in things that I have deficiencies. Say, for example, like hand-to-hand combat. That is where Jared comes in. Again, welcome, Jared. We are very happy to have you.
Yeah, likewise. And like I mentioned earlier, I don't know that I would be considered the end-all be-all when it comes to combatives, but it's something I definitely enjoy and excel at. So happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are some questions I want to ask you specifically about your background and about defensive tactics in the law enforcement community, as well as just the general preparedness community. But before I get into those questions, why don't you tell the viewers a little bit about yourself so they know who you are, know what your background is.
Okay. Yeah, like you mentioned, I do kind of lean towards the combative side, and that started on kind of at an early age. Growing up, we, as young kids growing up in rural Indiana, we were out in the country a lot, shooting and hunting and fishing. And as I got older, kind of started getting into the sports side, wrestling, and that kind of carried me all the way through high school. I actually turned down a couple scholarships to join the Marine Corps when the time came, and from there kind of got in more in the combative side. I did wrestle on the base team in the Marine Corps, but being in the infantry, didn't have a lot of time for that.
Yeah.
Did a lot of great training, had great NCOs, great commanding officers and staff NCOs that really focused on the training side of things. Had the opportunity to do some really cool training in the Marine Corps prior to our combat deployment in 03. Once we returned back from overseas, I got out of the Marine Corps and briefly pursued a career in fire technology. Decided almost immediately that wasn't going to work.
Good decision.
And
best decision of your life, right there.
And led me into a career in law enforcement. So from there, I found the opportunity to get more involved with combatives again. Found myself as a defensive tactics instructor, and have been doing that pretty consistently now for about 6 or 7 years. So.
Okay.
Weapon retention out of the holster, standing. A lot of guys will say, well, what puts you in this position? Think about weapon malfunctions, subject closing, able to do the gun grab, and then think about the two different axes on the weapon. Time has proven that he's going to be more powerful, have better leverage pushing towards me. And not only that, but I'm moving into the unknown. So as my opponent pushes me, even as I'm dragging and pulling and pushing this way, I'm still moving into that unknown. 2 or 3 good pumps, as I start to feel that grip break, then I can start to offline and pull that weapon off, right? Careful that front sight, all right? That'll snag the shit out of your hand when you're doing this. So he has the axis, push, clear, offline, all right? And again, careful not to punch out too, because I just cleared this weapon from his grip. I want to not re-present it. So, and we can even do it like starting on the ground, but like from here, the gun, even if you have a grip established here, 2 on 1, little change, then I can come out.
Yeah, basically so like a hip escape type thing? Or?
Yeah, so as the weapon is here, right, rather than trying to force here, you're going to be trying to push up this way anyways. Bump here. If I can't clear it, push, weapon's out of battery, right? Go to pull trigger, nothing happens. Tap, rack, I'm out of ammo, but
yeah,
bang.
I actually felt that. Didn't seem difficult for you to push me that way because that is my natural way.
That's natural where you're going anyways, yeah.
I've been with a few different departments, and obviously I've experienced all of their DTAC programs, and they all seem very similar. And to me, from my perspective, you can correct me, if you have a different opinion, but it's more check the box. It's quarterly DTAC sessions, 4 times a year, and you're just completing whatever is required by the state or the federal, mandates. And in my opinion, training anything 4 times a year, it doesn't matter if it's DTAC or firearms, any skill set, if you're training it 4 times a year, in all likelihood, you're not going to really develop any real proficiency in that. And it just seems like it's inadequate. So how important is it for your average law enforcement officer to actually seek out training on their own time, on their own dime, to ensure that they're capable to defend themselves and actually
Right.
make it home to their families every day, as well as potentially protect themselves against any kind of civil or criminal liability in
Right.
case they find themselves doing something wrong.
Well, first of all, to answer your question, it's absolutely crucial, and you nailed it earlier when you said that when we're talking about the training offered by the service, in most cases, it is mostly administrative, checking boxes. How does it look on paper? And at the end of the day, unfortunately, I think it has more to do with protecting the service than really protecting
Yeah.
the agents and officers and operators in the field. So it is absolutely crucial that guys seek that additional training on their own.
Yeah.
In most cases, what the service is going to offer in terms of consistency, which again is really kind of the key ingredient there. It's just really isn't going to cut it. And as we mentioned earlier, when we talk about officers and operators involved in these critical stress situations, it's been proven they are going to fall back on their lowest level of training. So that kind of speaks for itself. And again, not to get too nerdy or statistical, but over 50,000 officers assaulted last year. At least 20% of those with serious injuries or death. Those statistics speak for themselves.
Yeah, and on the training side, it seems like, and I mean it's understandable to a degree, but it seems like everything's catered towards the lowest common denominator, right? They have to
Absolutely.
bring the lowest skilled level person up to those
Right.
standards, but the issue that arises is these guys who need to be getting better training, to really make themselves proficient, they're kind of being held back by that, and
Yeah.
that's where going and getting additional training is going to come into play.
Right, and that's a great point. The service can only cater to, again, not to say the lowest common denominator, but to those agents that are capable of performing
Yeah.
whatever those tasks may be. And in a lot of situations, that training simply isn't going to be enough for what's required of them, especially in today's law enforcement environment. It's just not going to be enough.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and then going on a different side of it, I mean, it seems like law enforcement officers nowadays are constantly being hyper analyzed. They're always under the microscope. Every action is being judged rather than putting yourself in the shoes of that officer, the boots of that officer, having to make that decision. And was it a reasonable decision at the time based on the circumstances at hand, as well as how much time they actually had to make the decision? Now it appears that everything's kind of just judged hindsight 2020,
Right.
and it's ever increasingly so.
Yeah, and it's only going to continue to get worse, like we mentioned. And oftentimes these officers and agents and operators in the field are being scrutinized by people that have very little, if any, background in law enforcement or in combatives. And also brings up a really good point that in addition to officers and agents training their combatives, maintaining that proficiency and staying consistent with that training, they also additionally have to become really well versed in their case law, their statutory authority, and things like that, so that, like you mentioned, they can be protected and are safe in those administrative and criminal
Yeah.
proceedings.
In all likelihood, they'll eventually, through a 20 or 30 year career, you may find yourself in that situation.
Quite honestly, if you are doing your job in a 20 or 30 year career, it's almost nearly impossible nowadays to not find yourself in that situation.
Well, then on that note, and we're talking about law enforcement officers, but I also think there's a bridge to the civilian, general preparedness community. If you have an adult who hasn't really trained hand-to-hand combat in their life, they're, have a few hours a week to get some training in, they want to dip their toe in, where would you guide them? What discipline would be the most effective in your opinion, if any?
Yeah. Well, again, like I mentioned before, I'm a little partial to jiu-jitsu because it's something that I've been training for a while. I think it really translates well to law enforcement operations and being able to prevent situations from escalating, becoming more violent, more turbulent when they do happen. But again, anything is better than nothing.
Yeah.
So if guys are really out there seeking, they see content like this and they really decide to get after it, see what's out there, try different disciplines, try your Muay Thai, your boxing, your striking, and jiu-jitsu, and see what fits for you, see what works for you in your environment. And you may be surprised what's out there and what works for you.
Yeah.
So.
And just as with any skill set, not just hand-to-hand combats, but firearms, anything you're training, consistency is always the key. You can't just go in and do something 4 times a year or consistently for a month and then stop. It just doesn't work. The same thing with fitness. That's just not how it works. You have to actually get out there, train, stay proficient in it, and stay at it in order to develop that proficiency or even mastery. And the same thing is for hand-to-hand combat. So
I agree. Yeah, that really is kind of the key ingredient when we're talking about really any type of training. That proficiency can only be developed through consistent, repetitive training.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Jared, thank you for joining us. I can't tell you how ecstatic I am that you are on the team. Guys, this guy is the real deal and as humble as they come. So expect more content from myself as well as him. You got anything else you want to add?
Nope, happy to be aboard and appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, of course, man.
All right.
All right, guys, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to subscribe. There's going to be more videos coming from myself, obviously, as well as Jared now. So hit the subscribe button. Also hit that thumbs up button. Thank you for tuning in. We really do appreciate you, and we'll see you on the next one.